What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and today we're going to be finally getting around to Assetto Corsa Porsche Pack number 1. Yes, I realize Porsche Pack number 2 has released for Assetto Corsa actually earlier today, the date of me recording the commentary, but I will get to that. Obviously, there's been a bit of a backlog here on this channel and things to go through, and we will get to that. I will cover that because how can you not like Porsches? Yeah. Now, as I do usually for the DLC reviews for Assetto Corsa, just going to be going through all the cars really quickly, saying a little blurb about them. Although this time, I'm not going to be going in order of my least favorite to my most favorite car in the package, because they're all just kind of really right there in the middle, the same, more or less. As well as the fact that I already did a race in the 91730, which is hands down my favorite car in this package because of what it is, which is, holy crap, the 91730. So I think that's kind of irrelevant, and I'll go ahead and do a race at the end with the Carrera RSR, the 1974, I think it is. So yeah. So let's start with the free car in this DLC package, the Porsche Panamera Turbo, otherwise known as the ultimate troll car. This thing is going to be brilliant to just troll people with in those Nürburgring Track Day servers when they're running around in their 911 Carreras and their C7 Stingrays, and meanwhile you're going just as fast as they are in a four-door, ugly as can be Luxo barge that just so happens to be a Porsche, which means it goes really, really, really fast. And that's what it does. It's big, it's hefty, it feels big and hefty, but at the same time it's still exceptionally nimble, and the brakes are outstanding for a car that weighs like 2 tons. I mean, this thing does not compute, does not make sense, and that's why it's totally awesome at doing what it does. So beginning with the proper DLC cars, the non-free cars, starting with my least favorite car in the DLC package, and sadly by quite a long ways, as well as quite disappointingly too, because this was probably the car that I was expecting to like the most of the street cars within this DLC pack, but it is the 718 Cayman S, which it just doesn't have anything for me. I don't understand it. I can't feel the car. It doesn't click with me. It's very vague. It's very numb. When you turn the traction control off, the car is just absolutely all over the place in a scattered mess of just poo. The best way I can describe driving this car is it feels like the rear end is just like 10 times too stiff for the sake of let's make the car turn, and the car does turn, and it does go around the corner as well, and the lap times are good, and the car is drivable. However, it's just not something that I find fun to drive, because it's always just kind of like, when is the rear end just going to randomly slide out with no warning, which is very bizarre in Assetto Corsa. Next up, the 918 Spider, to complete the hypercar trifecta within Assetto Corsa, with the LaFerrari, the P1, and then the 918 finally. Yeah. First of all, the hypercars, they don't really appeal to me. They aren't really my thing, so I haven't spent all that much time in them. I know some people like religiously drive these cars because they have buttloads of power, as well as they go really fast and have great handling and all that. But in my opinion, from what I recall from driving the LaFerrari and the P1, it's definitely exceptionally different from those cars in that it is a much better race car than it is compared to some of those other cars, which can be a bit more difficult to manage, which can be a bit more fun. But if you're going for lap time, I think the 918 would be competitive just because you can push harder, although I'm not sure it'd be faster because I haven't done the back-to-back time testing and all that, but it's definitely different. If you're the fan of these types of cars, you're probably going to enjoy it. If you're not a fan of these types of cars, you probably won't care at all. A Cayman that doesn't suck. Okay, maybe I'm the only guy who hates the streetcar 718 Cayman S in this package, but seriously. The Cayman GT4 Club Sport. It is a bona fide race car, not to be confused with the Cayman GT4 non-Club Sport, which is a street car and is not a GT4 car because thanks Porsche and your names and numbers that people don't understand, but make perfectly good sense if you do understand it, but most people don't understand it. But when this package originally released, I've seen a lot of positive reports from this car, and then finally, once I got my pedals repaired and got back up and running, I took it out as actually the second car that I drove after the 91730. Took it out to Monza and was thoroughly unimpressed and was like, why are people saying this car is actually good? And I did a little bit more testing and I still wasn't really positively impressed by it. And then actually recording this video, I went to VIR because I've been doing all my testing at VIR recently just to reevaluate lap times because it's a great circuit for those purposes in terms of figuring out what races with what. And holy bejeebus, then it clicked. Then it clicked. Heck of a lot of fun on a circuit like that. Some of the other circuits, maybe not so much, but it's a GT4 car, and GT4 cars are something I would like to see more of within Assetto Corsa and sim racing in general, because I think they offer a close enough to a street car to be reasonable, but at the same time clearly a race car, and just fun little dynamic there. So I like this car. And rounding out the list of the modern cars within the Pack 1 DLC is the 911 Carrera S. Not a GT3, not a GT3 RS, not a GT2, not a turbo, just a relatively bog standard 911 Carrera S. So it's got a little bit of extra sporty nature to it than a standard 911, but nothing crazy, not a hardcore track day car at all. And it drives as such. It's understeery, it's pretty sane, pretty tame, pretty easy to get to grips with. It's not gonna drive you crazy with huge amounts of difficulty or anything like that. It just pretty much does. Pretty much anyone should be able to drive this car relatively competently because it is that easy to drive. Now that said, because it does have the engine in the back, because that's still a thing thanks to the 911, yeah, it does understeer quite a bit, and it does kind of feel lethargic in general, which maybe that's just because it's just a standard-ish 911 and not a track day oriented one. But It definitely feels a little lethargic. However, the thing I do like most about this car is absolutely the fact it is a near perfect match for the C7 Stingray within Assetto Corsa, to the point where my lap times around VIR full were about 0.2 of a second slower in the 911 versus the Stingray. Though mind you, I have a heck of a lot more seat time with the Corvette here in Assetto Corsa because it is one of my favorite cars, and definitely one of my favorite street cars within Assetto Corsa. So I do think there will be very competitive, as well as the fact that because of the badge and because of the fact it's a 911, I'm sure a lot of people on those track day servers will instantly hog this car. Meanwhile, I'll be hunting you down with my Corvette because America! Also because power oversteer beats power understeer. And now, finally, for the rest of the video, where we will be shifting gears properly with an H-pattern gearbox, because paddles? What are paddles? Come on now. To the 935-78 Moby Dick, otherwise known as, oh, let's just go ahead and throw all the body work we can at this thing and make it kind of sort of look like a 911 if you squint really, really hard, but still enough for the rules and regulations and loopholes and, well, you know, just Porsche doing their thing. But actually a pretty interesting car to drive. The power delivery is actually very easy to come to grips with. The turbo spools up slowly, but it does spool up pretty linearly. It's actually very easy to feel the boost come in rather than kind of what I was expecting, sort of along the lines of what the 917-30 delivers, and just all of a sudden you have no power, then boost! Not so much with this car. However, the thing that's going to be exceptionally tricky is the fact this thing has apparently the worst suspension setup in the history of mankind, meaning that on the brakes, this thing is incredibly unstable and constantly trying to spin around like a top. Now, if you can go ahead and manage that, you can get the car to actually rotate on entry, and then because this car also has a spool in the rear end, meaning a fully locked differential essentially all the time, you can get the car to have tremendous amounts of grip and just go. So if you can get it right, it's going to be incredibly satisfying. Otherwise, you're going to have a heck of a time getting the car into the corner properly and then getting off of the corner. Because if you don't get the corner entry right, then you're not going to get the corner exit right because the car's just going to want to understeer rather than already being in that nice, gentle little four-wheeled slide with the boost coming on and the power going down and the car going forward at a rapid rate of velocity. This brings us to my favorite car in the DLC, one which I've already done a video with. You can find that down in the description if you haven't already seen that and you're interested in that. But the 917-30, the Can-Am car, the quote-unquote Can-Am killer, the quote-unquote Turbo Panzer, the quote-unquote it's got 1100 freaking horsepower. How can you not like this thing? Ridiculousness is this car. Ridiculousness defines this car. This car makes no sense at all. It should not be, but yet somehow it is and it was, and therefore that's totally glorious because this thing existed at one point or another. 1100 horsepower in race configuration. You crank the boost up all the way, you get like 1400, 1500 horsepowers, and it just goes like you would not believe. It's insane how quickly this car gets down the straightaway, and that makes it a heck of a lot of fun because you are constantly struggling to put the power down. You know, even with 19-inch wide rear tires, the boost and the power is so strong. You're constantly trying to get the car right, and I quite frankly cannot think of many cars that are more difficult to get in that one lap than just this car. I get bored of hot lapping pretty dang quick, but this car is sort of an exception just because of the obscene difficulty of getting the absolute maximum and feeling that satisfaction from getting that out of your driving as well as the car. Heck of a challenge. Really like it. Strongly suggest that you give it a whirl because it is so stupid, and that makes it awesome. This leaves just one last car remaining, and that would be the Carrera 3.0 RSR. So let's go ahead and drive it. Alrighty, so we fired up Silverstone 1967, which was the circuit that released as part of the 1.9 update, which came alongside the Porsche pack here. This is Silverstone 1967, exactly what it says it is. Racing against a field of AI here. 1.9 update did seemingly bring some improvement, although personally I don't find it to be anything too revelatory. It's better, but that's about it right there. But one thing that is definitely better, Silverstone 1967 compared to the modern thing. Back when this was a proper circuit, all the proper bits and everything like that, when it was simple, straightforward, and it wasn't just yet another modern medium downforce circuit. Yep, just went there. Back when it had a soul, back when it had an identity. Ugh. Then again, I also really, really, really dislike modern Silverstone. But one thing I don't dislike, historic 911s, because they're fun. They handle like crap in a totally awesome, fun, enjoyable way. It's kind of like the German version of the muscle car, essentially. Like, muscle cars are fun because they don't handle at all, so therefore it's fun to try and get them to handle. These things handle, but they handle in such a stupid, goofy way that normal people would say, yeah, that probably isn't how it's supposed to work, right? But yeah, that's how it's supposed to work. That's working as designed. And yes, that is pretty much the only time you'll hear a historic 911 compared to a muscle car. Yeah, that's what you get here when you're watching these videos. It's just got that quirky rear engine character, just kind of a goofy car in some senses, but if you understand what's going on, it's actually very enjoyable. You basically got to get the car pitched into the corner, kind of got to get it a little bit sideways, and then you got to basically just put your foot down, let the weight in the back do its thing, and eventually you'll get the grip, and you'll get going. Although, of course, I'm doing a very poor job at demonstrating that as I'm going sideways every single corner. But you want to go sideways at the entry to the corner, not in the middle of the corner. If you're doing it in the middle of the corner, you're just going slow. But it really is kind of a game of pitch and catch, if you will. I have done a little bit of tweaking on this setup just to get a little bit more oversteer out of the car, get it more to my liking. For that, I just went ahead, stiffened the rear, anti-roll bar, softened the front, dropped the front ride height, as well as removed all of the coast side locking, and then added all of the coast side locking available. in the differential section. And then on top of that, I added fuel, which of course in this car goes in the nose, so you can get a little bit more quirky. It is definitely a very fun, enjoyable car to drive. That's why people really like these cars. Of course, it's also why a lot of people hate these cars, because after all, the engine's in the wrong place and it's just a squashed Beetle, right? They're a little wide there. It's a bit of a mid-corner snap. Get it sideways, make the correction, drive on through. Fun, fun, fun. Of course, run off the road because these cars are supposed to be rally cars as well, right? It's funny because it's kind of, sort of, actually, totally, entirely, legitimately true. But I do foresee these cars being very popular online. You know, it's got the name, it's got the pedigree, it's a car that people want to drive because people want to drive this car. As well as the fact it's just a fun car to drive because it is the car that it is, and that's why people like this car. But, you know, these cars definitely not anything new to sim racing, and in general, you know, the GT Legends has a version of this car, Power and Glory mod, Historic GT and Touring Car, you know, mods for R Factor and GTR2. You know, and those cars were immensely popular within those platforms, so I expect the Assetto Corsa to be no different at all for a very long while. That's a good thing. I'd much rather see people driving these things than more GT3 cars, because we have enough GT3 cars in general. But yeah, I understand the appeal, but still, historic GT cars. Woo, yeah! So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and shut up here past the leader because they're slow, and enjoy the sounds. remember when Woodcote was actually a corner and not just a minor inconvenience? I'm sure Pepperidge Farm remembers. But anyways, in case you're wondering, yes, this thing is basically like a trainer version for the 935. Yeah, many of the same traits, not surprisingly. Definitely apply to that car, only the difference is that thing's got more power, more boost, as well as basically more of everything except for gears and differential, because that thing also has a spool in the back like the 91730, which means have fun. There we go. I'm pretty sure these are the only cars which you are allowed to go through corners totally sideways and yet somehow not lose just giant heaps of times. I mean, yeah, you're still losing time, but like it works. Although again, going off circuit there, not the best idea in the world. Just gotta treat that corner as sort of two apexes there. Always kind of feels like you turn in a bit too early, but if you don't turn in early, then you just basically go straight on off the road, and that's pretty much that. So it's gonna basically set up to really get the run down straight away. It's really not much more needs to be said. This car's fantastic. The DLC Volume 1, I would say it's pretty dang stout. It's really going to come down to how much you enjoy Assetto Corsa, how big of a Porsche fanboy are you. But if you're just someone like me who's not necessarily, hugely brand loyal or anything like that, it's got something for everyone here with the Volume 1 package. Having everything from the modern hypercar in the 918 to classic racing insanity in the 91730. So something for everybody, and a pretty good history to go alongside those virtual reproductions of those automobiles. So I'm gonna finish up the lap here and put a replay camera, let you guys listen to the external sounds of this thing. Heck, you know what? Let's just try and do this corner up here just totally sideways. See if we can do it. Nope, two sideways, two sideways, two sideways. See, that's why I don't drift. I stick in going around in elaborate circles rather than drifting. So, anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.